dear higher power guy or gal.
His name is Jesus.
So in this video we're going to see a Q&A with John Lennox and a member of the audience during his debate with Michael Shermer.
Another question over here.
Dr. Lennox, St. Augustine said that reason is the enemy of faith. And I would like to ask you a question with regards to original sin. Why would you choose to worship a creator God who forbade man to actually eat from the tree of knowledge, one which you have obviously eaten from because you're a rather knowledgeable man? Why would you choose to worship this sort of deity who would have kept you dumb?
That's a very good question. I'll tell you why it's a good question. I notice it was asked originally by a snake. That is not implying any offence at all.
None taken.
Because, well, let me try to answer your question. The story in Genesis fascinates me because it is a story that defines for us what life really is. It defines it at its various levels, from the physical to the aesthetic, to family life, to work. And the highest thing in life, according to that story, is a relationship with God that's morally determined. And the issue was whether human beings could trust God or not. So there were two trees, as you know. The scene shows us the basic minima necessary for a moral being. Something forbidden, but freedom to take it. Now, what was the issue? The enemy said, has God really said you shan't eat of all the trees of the garden? Nonsense. And then he pointed out what you've pointed out to me. God wants to suppress you, you see. He wants to keep you down. It'll cripple you intellectually, aesthetically, and everything else if you go for this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so they did, and they ate the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There are two ways of knowing good and evil. Notice, not a tree of knowledge, by the way. God was very keen.
In Hebrew it's called the Etz Hadat, and Dat means knowledge, not good or evil.
And is good or evil not mentioned?
No, it is not.
At all?
Not
okay, I stand corrected there. I'd like to find out about that afterwards.
Now notice the claim, which is basically that, sure, the English translation might have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but that the original Hebrew, don't you know, only says tree of knowledge. Now, as you can see from these screenshots, actually the original Hebrew has et da'at, that's correct, but it continues with tov ra. So et da'at tov ra, tree, knowledge, good, evil. It's all right there. So what this really is what I like to call linguistic elitism. In other words, oh, you don't know the original language, which I can quote off the top of my head? Well then, it's sort of like a claim to authority. Of course, you do need to take a moment and check out the facts. As John Lennox said he would be doing so afterwards. So there it is, pretty simple. Just pull up a concordance, look at the original languages, and there's your answer.
But the fact that God is clearly not against knowledge is clear elsewhere in that very text, because God actually started science by encouraging human beings to name the animals at the beginning of Genesis, which is what we call taxonomy. Now, to just very briefly wrap up on this, the notion that believing in God keeps you down is very common today. I was told when I was 19 by a Nobel Prize winner. He said to me, "Do you want a career in science?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Give up this childish notion of belief in God. It will cripple you intellectually completely, and you'll never make a career in science." I quietly said to him, "Sir, what have you got to offer me that I haven't got?" And he talked about emergent evolution. The answer to your question, though, is this. Do I worship a God who wants to keep me down? Tell you the kind of God I worship. I worship the kind of God who made me in his image and coded himself into humanity, came into our world to provide a basis through his death and resurrection that I could become something that I was not by creation, and that is a son of God. And the basic message of the Christian faith is a magnificent one, that God is prepared to give the individual who trusts Christ his very life, and that person rises in that sense and is given all the potential of God to be able to enjoy his friendship. The capacity of enjoying friendship with God is the biggest thing in my life, and it will be the biggest thing eternally. The notion that God is trying to keep us down is actually the original lie.